Jake Morrison felt the cold metal floor against his face as he slowly opened his eyes. His head hurt badly, and everything looked blurry. He tried to move, but his arms and legs felt heavy and weak. The air smelled strange, like burned metal, and something sour that made his nose wrinkle. He was lying in a small room with gray walls that seemed to glow with a dim light. There were no windows, and only one door that looked too thick to break. Jake tried to remember what happened, but his mind felt foggy. He remembered being on the USS Horizon with his crew, exploring new star systems, far from Earth. They were looking for planets that humans could live on someday. The ship had been flying through the Veil Nebula when the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere, and Captain Martinez was shouting orders. Jake ran to his station, but then something hit the ship hard. The lights went out, and he heard terrible sounds of metal breaking and people screaming. After that, everything went black. Now he was alone in this strange room. Jake sat up slowly and felt his uniform. It was torn in places, but still mostly there. His name tag still said Lieutenant Commander Morrison. He touched his pocket where he kept a picture of his sister back on Earth, but it was gone. The door made a hissing sound and opened. 3 creatures walked in, and Jake had never seen anything like them before. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, and covered in dark green scales that looked wet. Their heads were long like lizards, and they had yellow eyes that seemed to glow. They wore black clothes that looked like armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. One of them spoke in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake could not understand the words, but somehow the meaning appeared in his head. The creatures had some kind of machine that translated their language directly into his brain. Human, awake now. Human will come with us. Human will not fight, or human will be hurt. Jake wanted to fight. Every part of him wanted to jump up and attack these things that had taken him from his ship. But he was still weak, and there were 3 of them with weapons. He had been a Marine before joining the space service, and Marines were taught to pick their battles carefully. This was not a battle he could win right now. Where are my crew members? What happened to my ship? Jake asked as he stood up slowly. The largest creature tilted its head, and its yellow eyes seemed to study Jake like he was some kind of strange animal. Human ship destroyed. Most humans dead, some humans alive. You will see some soon. Jake felt his heart sink. Most of his friends were dead. Captain Martinez, who had been like a father to him. Chief Engineer Bobby, who always made everyone laugh. Navigator Susan, who knew more about stars than anyone. All gone, the creatures led Jake out of the small room and down a long hallway. The walls were the same gray metal, and the air still smelled strange. They passed many doors, and Jake wondered if other prisoners were behind them. He could hear sounds sometimes, voices speaking in languages he did not know. They came to a larger room where Jake saw something that made him feel a little better. Lisa Grant was sitting on a bench, still wearing her blue communications officer uniform. She looked up when she saw Jake, and her face showed relief. Lisa was one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. She could speak 6 different Earth languages and had studied alien cultures for years before they left Earth. She was small, maybe 5 feet 4 inches, with brown hair tied back and dark eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something important. Jake, thank God you are okay, Lisa said as she stood up. I was worried they had killed you too. The creatures pushed Jake toward Lisa, and he sat down beside her. One of the creatures spoke again, and the translation appeared in both their minds. 2. Humans will travel together. Ship goes to Corthic Prime. There you will be processed and assigned to living areas. Do not try to escape. Ship has many weapons, and you will die. Jake looked around the room and saw other prisoners. There was a creature that looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and green skin. Another looked like a rock that could walk and had glowing eyes. A third prisoner was covered in white fur and had a long tail that moved back and forth. "How long have you been awake?" Jake asked Lisa quietly. "About 2 hours. These are called HFY. They are some kind of reptile race that captures people from other worlds. The ship we are on is taking us to their prison planet." Lisa whispered back. Jake felt his stomach drop. A prison planet sounded terrible. He had heard stories about alien prisons where humans were treated like animals or worse. But he also felt angry. Humans had only been exploring space for 50 years, but they had already made enemies who wanted to lock them up. The ship shook slightly, and Jake heard the sound of engines changing. One of the HFY creatures spoke to the others in their own language, then turned to the prisoners. "Ship arrives at Korthik Prime soon. All prisoners will be taken to processing center. Follow orders or be destroyed." Through a small window, Jake could see stars and a large dark shape getting bigger. It looked like a moon, but it was covered in lights and metal structures. Ships were flying around it like insects around a lamp. This was their destination. Lisa moved closer to Jake and whispered so quietly he could barely hear her. "We need to stay together. I have been watching these creatures and listening to the other prisoners. This prison is very bad, but I know how we might survive." Jake nodded. He trusted Lisa completely. If anyone could figure out how to survive an alien prison, it would be her. He just hoped they would live long enough to try whatever plan she was thinking about. The ship shook again as it landed, and Jake heard the sound of heavy doors opening. Their journey to hell was about to begin. The doors of the transport ship opened with a loud hiss, and Jake felt cold air rush into the holding area. The smell was even worse here, like rotting meat mixed with chemicals that burned his nose. Bright lights shined down from above and hurt his eyes after being in the dim ship for so long. HFY guards pushed Jake and Lisa forward with the other prisoners. They walked down a metal ramp onto a platform that was bigger than a football field. All around them were huge walls that went up so high Jake could not see the top. The walls were covered in weapons that moved back and forth, watching everything. Other ships were landing on different platforms, and Jake could see more prisoners being unloaded. There were creatures he had never imagined in his worst dreams. Some were twice as tall as humans, with too many arms and legs. Others were small, but covered in spikes that looked sharp enough to cut metal. A few looked almost human, but with skin colors that were not natural. "Stay close to me," Lisa whispered as they were pushed toward a large building. "I have been listening to the other prisoners talk, and this place has rules we need to learn fast." The building they entered was enormous. The ceiling was so high, it disappeared into darkness above them. Hundreds of prisoners were lined up in rows with guards watching them. Jake noticed that many of the prisoners were chained to each other in pairs. A voice boomed through the air, speaking in many different languages at once. The translation machine in Jake's head made the words clear. "Welcome to Korthik Prime. You are now property of the HFY Empire. You will follow all rules, or you will be sent to the processing chambers. No one returns from the processing chambers." Jake felt Lisa grab his arm. Her face was pale, and he could see she was scared. That made him scared too, because Lisa was not afraid of anything normally. A massive HFY walked onto a platform in front of all the prisoners. This one was bigger than the others and wore more armor. Scars covered his face and arms, and his yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter than the Yah. "Rest. I am General Mordek, Warden of Korthik Prime. This prison holds the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. You are here because you have proven to be threats to the HFY Empire or our allies." Jake wanted to shout that they were not threats to anyone. They were explorers, not soldiers. But he kept his mouth shut. Starting a fight now would only get them both killed. General Mordick continued speaking. The prison operates on simple rules. Strong species protect weak species. Mated pairs and family groups receive better food and housing. Those who cause trouble disappear forever. Those who cooperate live longer. The prisoners were divided into groups based on what species they were. Jake and Lisa were put with about 20 other creatures that the guards did not seem to know much about. A Kethver with different armor approached them. You are humans. We have heard stories about your species but never captured any before. You will be classified as unknown potential threat level and placed in maximum security until we understand you better. They were led through more hallways, and Jake tried to remember the way they came. The walls all looked the same, but he noticed small numbers and symbols that might help him find his way back later. Lisa was doing the same thing. He could tell by how her eyes moved around. They came to a section where the cells were larger, and Jake could see pairs of prisoners inside each. Most of them were clearly from the same species, but some were mixed pairs that seemed to know each other well. Mated pairs get better treatment, Lisa whispered. Look at their cells. They have more space, better beds, and I think they get more food. Jake looked and saw she was right. The pairs had cells that were almost twice as big as the single prisoner. Cells they had passed earlier. They also had what looked like furniture and personal items. A guard stopped in front of an empty cell and opened the door. Human male and human female will share this cell. Computer analysis shows you have compatible genetics for potential mating. Jake felt his face get hot. We are not mates. We are just crew members from the same ship. The guard tilted its head, and its yellow eyes studied them both. Computer shows elevated stress hormones when separated. Body language indicates protective behaviors toward each other. This suggests pair bonding among your species. That is just friendship, Lisa said quickly. Humans often care about their friends. The guard made a sound that might have been laughter. Friendship is mating behavior for many species. You will be classified as potential mated pair until proven otherwise. They were pushed into the cell, and the door closed with a heavy sound. Jake heard multiple locks clicking into place. The cell was about 12 feet by 12 feet with 2 narrow beds, a toilet, and a small area with a water faucet. Lisa sat down on one of the beds and put her head in her hands. This is worse than I thought. They have some kind of computer system that analyzes prisoner behavior and decides how to treat them. Jake sat on the other bed and looked around their new home. At least we are together. And this cell is bigger than the single ones we saw. That is exactly the problem, Lisa said, looking up at him. They think we are a mated pair because we were on the same ship and we care about each other. But Jake, I have been watching the other prisoners, and I think being classified as mates might actually help us. Through the small window in their cell door, Jake could see into the cell across from them. 2 creatures that looked like walking trees were sharing food from a larger bowl than the single prisoners received. They seemed calm and comfortable with each other. The mated pairs get better food, larger cells, and more freedom to move around. The prison, Lisa continued. They also seemed to be left alone, more by the guards and other prisoners. Jake understood what she was thinking, but he did not like it. You want us to pretend to be mates so we get better treatment. I want us to survive, Lisa said firmly. And I think this might be our only chance. The computer system is already watching us and analyzing everything we do. If we act like humans who care about each other, it will keep us classified as a mated pair. A slot in the door opened, and a guard pushed 2 bowls of food inside. The food looked like gray paste and smelled terrible, but Jake's stomach was so empty he did not care. They ate in silence while Jake thought about what Lisa had suggested. What exactly would we have to do? Jake asked finally. Lisa was quiet. For a moment, I have been watching the other pairs. They share food, they sleep close together, they touch each other gently, and they seem to communicate without talking sometimes. Most importantly, they protect each other when other prisoners get too close. Jake looked at Lisa and realized he already did most of those things naturally. They had been friends for 3 years on the ship, and he would definitely protect her from anyone who tried to hurt her. You really think this will work? I think it is our best chance to stay alive long enough to find a way out of here, Lisa said. And Jake, I have been studying the other prisoners while we were being processed. There are dozens of different species here, and they all have different behaviors and weaknesses. The lights in the hallway dimmed, and Jake heard the sounds of the prison settling down for whatever passed for night in this place. Some prisoners were still talking in languages he could not understand, but most were quiet. Okay, Jake said finally, we will try it. But we need to be careful. If they figure out we are lying, they might separate us or worse. Lisa moved her bed closer to his and sat down beside him. Then we better make sure they never figure it out. Jake woke up to the sound of metal doors opening throughout the prison. The lights had come back on, and he could hear guards shouting orders in different languages. Lisa was already awake, sitting on her bed and watching the hallway through their small window. They bring food soon, she said quietly. I watched the routine yesterday. After that, they let the mated pairs out for 2 hours to walk around and use the common areas. Jake sat up and tried to make his hair look less messy. He felt strange about what they were going to do, but he knew Lisa was right. They needed every advantage they could get in this place. A guard stopped at their door and pushed 2 bowls of the gray food through the slot. This time there was also some kind of fruit that was purple and shaped like a star. Lisa picked up both bowls and handed one to Jake. Thank you, Jake said, and Lisa smiled at him. It was not a fake smile for the guards to see. She really was grateful that he was willing to try her plan. They ate their food slowly, sitting close together on Jake's bed. Lisa had explained that many species showed affection by sharing food and staying close to their mates. When they finished eating, Lisa moved even closer and put her hand on Jake's arm. The guards are watching, she whispered so quietly that only he could hear. We need to look comfortable with each other. Jake put his arm around Lisa's shoulders and tried to look relaxed. It felt awkward at first because they had always been just friends and crewmates. But after a few minutes, it felt more natural. Lisa was warm, and she smelled like the soap they had been given to wash with Dot. The cell door opened, and a guard gestured for them to come out. Mated pairs exercise time. You have 2 hours. Stay together or be punished. They walked out into the hallway with about 30 other prisoner pairs. Jake was amazed at how different all the aliens looked. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others had 4 or 6 legs. A few seemed to float just above the ground without touching it at all. The common area was a huge room with tables, benches, and areas where prisoners could walk around. Jake noticed that each pair stayed close together and did not interact much with other pairs. There seemed to be invisible rules about personal space and territory. Lisa guided Jake to a table near the edge of the room where they could watch the other prisoners without being too obvious about it. She had always been good at observing people and figuring out how they behaved. Look at the pair by the far wall, Lisa said, pointing with her eyes instead of her finger. Those are graphics. They are the big ones with gray skin and lots of muscles. Jake looked and saw 2 massive creatures sitting across from each other at a table. They were bigger than any human, with arms as thick as tree trunks. But they were being very gentle with each other, touching hands and making soft sounds. They show affection by touching foreheads and sharing breath, Lisa explained. And see how they sit facing each other instead of side by side like we do. Different species have different mating behaviors. Over the next hour, Lisa pointed out more pairs and explained what she had observed. The insect-like creatures called sylphani communicated by changing the colors of their skin. The furry ones, called zetkar, groomed each other's fur constantly. The rock-like creatures called vorthani shared small stones that seemed to have special meaning. What about humans? Jake asked. What should our mating behavior look like? Lisa thought for a moment. Humans are different from all these species. We use words more than most aliens do. We touch each other gently. We protect each other, and we make eye contact when we communicate. A fight broke out near the center of the room between two single prisoners. Jake instinctively moved in front of Lisa to protect her, and she moved closer behind him. The guards broke up the fight quickly, but not before Jake noticed that several other mated pairs had done the same thing he did. Perfect, Lisa whispered. That was exactly right. Protective behavior is universal among mated pairs. When they returned to their cell, Jake felt like they had made progress. Acting like Lisa's mate was becoming more natural, and he had to admit that the better food and treatment made a big difference in how he felt. That evening, a different guard came to their cell. This one wore more decorations on its armor and seemed more important than the regular guards. I am Commander Zethker. I study prisoner behavior for General Mornick. Your species is new to us, and we must understand how you think and act. Jake felt nervous, but tried not to show it. Lisa moved closer to him and took his hand. Her touch was warm and reassuring. You have been classified as mated pair, but your behavior is different from other species. Explain your mating customs. Lisa squeezed Jake's hand, and he understood that she wanted him to let her do the talking. She was much better with words than he was. Humans form pair bonds based on emotional connection and mutual protection, Lisa said. We choose our mates by spending time together and learning to trust each other completely. Commander Zethker tilted its head. This is different from most species who mate based on genetic compatibility or territorial dominance. How do you know when pairing is successful? We know because we want to be together all the time, Jake said, surprising himself by how honest that sounded. We share everything, and we would do anything to protect each other. The commander made notes on a small device. Interesting. Your species seems to mate for emotional reasons rather than practical ones. This explains why you were both distressed when separated on the transport ship. After the commander left, Jake and Lisa sat on Jake's bed and talked quietly. The conversation with the alien had gone well, but it had also made Jake think about what they were doing. Lisa, when I said those things about wanting to be together and protecting each other, I realized I was not just acting for the guard. Lisa looked at him with a serious expression. What do you mean? I mean that even before we came here, you are one of the most important people in my life. I always looked forward to working with you on the ship. I always worried about you when we were in dangerous situations. Maybe what we are pretending is not as fake as I thought. Lisa was quiet for a long time. Then she moved closer and put her head on Jake's shoulder. I have been thinking the same thing. We were always just friends before, but being here together, having to depend on each other completely, it feels different now. Jake put his arms around her and held her close. So what does that mean for us? It means we keep doing what we are doing, but we stop thinking of it as just pretending, Lisa said. If we are going to survive this place, and maybe even escape someday, we need to trust each other completely. And maybe what we have now is worth more than just friendship. That night, they pushed their two narrow beds together and slept close to each other. It was not romantic exactly, but it was comfortable and safe. For the first time since being captured, Jake felt like they might actually have a chance to survive. The next morning brought new challenges, but it also brought the knowledge that they were not just pretending anymore. They were becoming something more than friends, and that made them stronger than either of them had been alone. 3 weeks had passed since Jake and Lisa arrived at Korthik Prime, and their daily routine had become natural. They shared meals, walked together during exercise time, and slept close to each other every night. The guards no longer questioned their status as a mated pair, and other prisoners had accepted them as part of the prison community. But Lisa had not forgotten her real goal. Every day she watched and listened and learned more about how the prison worked. She studied the guard rotations, the security systems, and the behavior patterns of different alien species. Jake helped by using his military training to map out the physical layout of the areas they were allowed to visit. Their breakthrough came during their 4th week when they gained access to the couple's recreation area. This was a larger space with better facilities that only mated pairs could use. It had exercise equipment, game tables, and most importantly, it had maintenance tunnels that connected to other parts of the prison. "Look over there," Lisa whispered to Jake as they pretended to play some kind of alien board game. "That grate near the wall is loose. I can see air moving through it." Jake looked where she indicated and saw a metal grate about 3 feet square near the floor. It did look like it had been disturbed recently, and there were scratches around the edges that suggested someone had tried to open it. "Maintenance access," Jake said quietly. "Most prisons have them for repairs and cleaning. If we could get in there, we might be able to move around without the guards seeing us." They spent the next several days observing the recreation area more carefully. Lisa noticed that the guards only checked on the mated pairs once every hour, and they always followed the same pattern. Jake timed their rounds and found a 20-minute window when that corner of the room was not being watched. During their exercise time, Lisa worked on learning more about the prison security system by talking to other prisoners. She was particularly interested in a pair of Silthani who had been in Korthik Prime for over 2 years. The Silthani were tall, thin creatures with large eyes and skin that changed color based on their emotions. The female, who Lisa learned was called Veltar, spoke several galactic languages and had worked on computer systems before being captured. "Security here is controlled by artificial mind," Veltar explained, while her skin showed patterns of blue and green. "Artificial mind learns from all prisoner behavior and predicts what each species will do. Very difficult to surprise." "What happens if someone does something unexpected?" Lisa asked. "Artificial mind becomes confused, sends guards to investigate. But artificial mind learns quickly and adapts to new behaviors." This gave Lisa an idea, but she needed to know more about how the prison's power systems worked. She asked Veltar about the maintenance cycles and learned something very important. Every 72 hours, power systems reduce from maintenance. Some security sensors turn off for 2 hours, while artificial mind runs diagnostic programs. Very dangerous time because backup systems are unreliable. That evening, Lisa shared what she had learned with Jake. They lay close together on their joined beds, speaking in whispers that were too quiet for any listening devices to pick up. "The AI system expects each species to behave in predictable ways," Lisa explained. "But humans are different. We can be completely irrational and unpredictable when we want to be." "What are you thinking?" Jake asked. "I am thinking that if we can create enough chaos and confusion during the next maintenance cycle, we might be able to reach the escape pods in the administrative section." Jake had discovered the escape pods during one of their walks when they took a wrong turn and ended up near a restricted area. The guards had quickly redirected them, but not before Jake saw the distinctive shape of small spacecraft designed for emergency evacuation. "That is a long way from here," Jake said. "We would have to get through multiple security checkpoints and past dozens of guards." "Not if everyone is distracted by something they cannot predict or understand," Lisa replied. "I have been watching how the other species behave when they are upset or angry. They all follow patterns. Graphics become violent but inorganized. Ways. The Zetkar panic, but they run in straight lines. Gavorthani shut down completely. But humans become chaotic. We do things that make no sense to logical minds. We take risks that seem stupid. We act on emotions instead of calculations. Lisa's plan was ambitious and dangerous. During the next maintenance cycle, they would stage what appeared to be a human mating dispute that would escalate beyond anything the AI system could predict. Other species had predictable mating behaviors, but humans could become completely irrational when relationships were involved. We create a scene that draws guards away from key areas, Lisa continued. While they are trying to figure out what humans do when pair bonding fails, we slip into the maintenance tunnels and make our way to the escape pod bay. Jake thought about all the things that could go wrong. What if they just shoot us when we start acting crazy? They will not shoot us immediately because we are valuable research subjects. They will try to understand what is happening first. That gives us time to execute the real plan. Over the next few days, they refined their strategy. Jake would use his military knowledge to create a distraction route through the prison while Lisa used her linguistic skills to hack into any computer terminals they encountered. They practiced moving silently and communicating with hand signals that looked like human gestures of affection. The maintenance cycle was scheduled to begin in 2 days. They had one chance to make this work, and if they failed, they would probably be separated or sent to the processing chambers that no one ever returned from. Lisa spent their last full day studying the behavior of the A system by watching how it responded to different situations. She noticed that it had trouble processing events that involved multiple species acting unpredictably at the same time. The AI is very smart, but it thinks in patterns, she told Jake. If we can break enough patterns at once, it will be overwhelmed, trying to process everything. That night, they held each other close and talked about their lives before the capture. Jake told Lisa about his sister, who was studying to be a doctor on Earth. Lisa told Jake about her parents, who had taught her to love learning about different cultures and languages. If we die tomorrow, I want you to know that these weeks with you have been the happiest of my life, Jake said. We are not going to die, Lisa replied firmly. We are going to escape, and we are going to warn Earth about this place, and we are going to save every human who might be captured in the future. Jake kissed her forehead gently. I love your confidence. I love your courage, Lisa replied. They fell asleep in each other's arms, knowing that tomorrow would either bring freedom or death. But they were no longer just pretending to be mates. They had become something stronger than either of them had been alone, and that gave them hope that they could accomplish the impossible. The maintenance cycle began at exactly 1400 hours prison time. Jake felt the subtle change in the air circulation system and noticed that some of the lights dimmed slightly. This was their signal to begin the most dangerous plan of their lives. They were in the couple's recreation area with about 20 other mated pairs when Lisa suddenly stood up and pushed Jake away from her with both hands. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. I cannot do this anymore, Jake. I cannot pretend that everything is fine when you keep looking at other females. Jake knew this was the start of their performance, but Lisa's acting was so good that for a moment he felt genuinely hurt. He stood up and raised his voice in response. What are you talking about, Lisa? I have never looked at anyone else. You are being crazy. Crazy. Lisa's voice got even louder, and other prisoners started watching them. You think I am crazy for noticing how you stare at that Silfani female every day. The guards at the edge of the room turned their attention to the human pair. Jake could see confusion on their reptilian faces. They had never seen humans argue before, and this was not following any pattern in their behavioral databases. Jake grabbed Lisa's arm, but she pulled away violently. Do not touch me. I am done with you and your lies. Lisa ran toward the far end of the recreation area, and Jake chased after her, shouting apologies that sounded desperate and genuine. Other prisoner pairs moved out of their way, clearly disturbed by the unexpected drama. Lisa, please listen to me. You are the only one I care about. This place is making you paranoid. Paranoid. Lisa spun around and slapped Jake across the face hard enough that the sound echoed through the room. I saw you touching her hand yesterday when you thought I was not looking. More guards were arriving now, and Jake could see the confusion spreading. The AI system was clearly struggling to process human mating behavior that did not match any known patterns. Alarms began sounding softly as the security system tried to determine the appropriate response. Lisa suddenly collapsed to her knees and began crying loudly. Jake knelt beside her and tried to put his arms around her, but she pushed him away again. I cannot live like this anymore. I would rather die alone than stay with someone who does not love me. The guards were completely bewildered now. Most alien species had very straightforward mating disputes that involved physical combat or territory marking. But humans were displaying emotional chaos that seemed to have no logical resolution. Commander Zethker arrived with additional security personnel, but even he seemed uncertain about how to handle the situation. He spoke into his communication device, probably asking the AI system for guidance. This was the moment Lisa had been waiting for. While all attention was focused on their dramatic scene, she caught Jake's eye and gave him the smallest possible nod. It was time for the real escape to begin. Lisa suddenly jumped up and ran toward the loose maintenance grate they had discovered. Jake followed her, still shouting about their relationship problems. To the watching guards, it looked like Lisa was trying to hide from Jake in her emotional distress. Lisa reached the grate and pulled it open with strength born from weeks of planning and desperation. She disappeared into the maintenance tunnel, just as the guards realized what was actually happening. Jake dove into the tunnel behind her just as energy weapons began firing. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but they had memorized the route during their weeks of observation. Lisa led the way while Jake followed, both of them crawling as fast as they could through the metal passage. Behind them, they could hear guards shouting orders and more alarms beginning to sound. The AI system was finally understanding that the mating dispute had been a deception, but it was too late to prevent their escape into areas where the security sensors were offline for maintenance. The tunnel led them through sections of the prison they had never seen before. They passed through areas with huge machines that hummed with power, and rooms filled with computer equipment that controlled the prison systems. Lisa stopped at one of the computer terminals and quickly began working. I need 2 minutes to disable the tracking systems, she whispered while her fingers moved rapidly over the alien controls. Jake watched both directions of the tunnel while Lisa worked her magic with the prison's computer system. He could hear search teams getting closer, but they seemed to be checking the wrong areas first. Got it, Lisa said finally. The AI has lost track of where we are, and the backup sensors will not come online for another hour. They continued through the maintenance system until they reached the administrative section of the prison. Here, the tunnels opened into larger service corridors that maintenance robots used to move around. Jake and Lisa could finally stand up and move more quickly. The escape pod bay was just ahead when they encountered their biggest obstacle. General Mordek was waiting for them with a squad of elite guards, their weapons already drawn and aimed. Very impressive humans, the massive Kethfer said in his grinding voice. Your deception was more sophisticated than we expected. You have taught us much about your species. Jake moved protectively in front of Lisa, but she stepped up beside him. Instead, they faced their captor together, holding hands and showing no fear. We are not going back to that cell, Lisa said firmly. General Mordek tilted his head in what might have been respect. I did not expect you to surrender easily. Your species is remarkable in its determination to be free. But you cannot escape. Corthic Prime. The defense systems around this moon will destroy any ship that tries to leave without authorization. Then we will die free instead of living as prisoners, Jake replied. The general studied them for a long moment. You truly would rather die than remain here, even with the comfortable life we provided for mated pairs. Freedom is more important to humans than comfort, Lisa said. We would rather take our chances in space than spend our lives in a cage. Something changed in General Mordak's expression. His yellow eyes seemed to glow with what Jake thought might be admiration. Your species fascinates me, humans. In all my years running this prison, no species has ever chosen certain death over comfortable captivity. You are either the bravest creatures I have ever encountered, or the most foolish. Maybe both, Jake said. General Mordak made a gesture to his guards, and they lowered their weapons. I am going to do something I have never done before. I am going to let you try to escape. Not because I think you will succeed, but because I want to see what impossible thing you do next. He stepped aside and pointed toward the escape pod bay. The pods are programmed to navigate through the defense grid. If you can reach the edge of our space, you will be free. But I do not believe any species can pilot one of those pods well enough to avoid our automated weapons. Jake and Lisa ran toward the nearest escape pod without waiting to see if the general would change his mind. The small spacecraft was designed for 2 occupants and had basic life support systems. Lisa quickly figured out the controls while Jake sealed the hatch. I have never flown anything like this before, Lisa said as the pod launched from the prison. Moon. I have never been more confident in anyone's abilities, Jake replied as he watched the defense platforms begin tracking their escape pod. What followed was the most terrifying 10 minutes of their lives. Lisa piloted the small craft through a maze of automated weapons and defense satellites, using intuition and desperate creativity rather than formal training. She made turns that no computer would have calculated, took risks that no logical mind would have accepted, and somehow guided them through impossible gaps in the defensive fire. Jake watched the prison moon shrink behind them as they reached the edge of Kethver space. They had done the impossible. 2 humans with nothing but determination and love for each other had escaped from the most secure prison in the galaxy. Where do we go now? Jake asked as Lisa set course for human space. Home, Lisa said simply. We go home and we tell everyone what we learned. And then we come back with a fleet and free every prisoner in that place. Jake looked at the woman beside him, who had become so much more than just a friend and crewmate. Together, always together, Lisa agreed. Their escape pod disappeared into hyperspace, carrying 2 humans who had proven once again that the most powerful force in the galaxy was not weapons or technology, but the refusal to accept defeat. Behind them, General Mordak watched their departure and made a note in his records that humans were now classified as the most dangerous species he had ever encountered.